Welcome to another episode of the Dealership Download. Tonight, we're bringing a different perspective from the automotive industry. So, Jose, before we get started, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and how people can find you on social media?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. My name's Jose. I go by either Gutierrez or Delgado. I think for the most part, Delgado is easier for most people to remember. You can find me on social media either by my traditional name through Facebook, or I go by JD underscore or slash Eclipse Auto at Instagram and TikTok.
And so, what do you do inside the industry?
So most would consider me something along the long sides of a broker. Some might consider me on the TikTok world a buyer's advocate. My actual licensing in the state of Colorado is a buyer's agent, which I think most would understand that as a buyer's advocate. What I do is facilitate the process for somebody buying a car, and that's negotiation. And, I think that process is pretty understood by many right now.
What made you decide to get into that side of the industry and pursue that aspect?
So I actually came across this thought during COVID, right around the time that we got shut down. I was considering, alternative ways for the industry to kind of make a motion because during that time, we were all shut down, but we were still showing cars, right? We were taking the cars to people's homes. If they wanted to buy a car or had a trade in, we were doing everything remote. And at some point, I was sitting there going, why can't we do this now, right? Like, why can't we include a system that allows us to not have to sit at the dealership every single time, especially when you don't have that kind of walk-in, right? And I started doing a little bit of research, and somehow along that line, I came across the licensing here in Colorado, which is the buyer's agent license. And during that time, I had more questions than I had answers about how to go about it. I had already been in the industry roughly about 4 or 5 years around that time. And I just, like I said, I had more questions than answers. I kind of put that off to the side and did a couple of shifts through a couple other dealerships. Had the opportunity to get into the desk with a GMC Buick dealership where I feel like I really solidified that knowledge of connecting sales, the desk, finance, and the entirety of the process from start to finish. And I wanted to get a little bit more freedom, and I wanted to really be able to help people from a different perspective. It really started to solidify during the time in which I actually sold my sister a car through the dealership I worked at, only to find out a year later when she was having issues with the car that the car had actually been a totaled vehicle at some point. It was brought in from an auction out of Arizona, I believe, and so somehow it just didn't make it through the system. So we found out through a friend that I had, and it really kind of hit home. When you try to do right by not only the company you work for, but with your family, and then not having that dealership or store help you out when you find this out, it kind of put it into a perspective of, okay, like, am I putting certain families or people in a bad situation with cars? And it doesn't hit, like I said, until it hits home. So I really started thinking about alternative ways to help, and then I got that thought back into place with the buyer's agent, got into doing that research, and that was December of 24. And then June of last year is when I finally decided to make that jump. It was a little difficult because for me, since I do have to be licensed, I can't mutually license anything together. So I ended up having to I had to give up my sales license and really just take a full dive into doing this.
It's crazy taking the full dive in and kind of just, trying something different, but obviously it's working very well for you. So, on the consumer side of things, if they wanted to reach out to you to use your services, how would they be able to reach out to you?
So I'm pretty open about my information. I do have my email, which is pretty simple. It's jd@eclipseauto.com, and I do spell Eclipse with a Y. You can find my phone number in most of my places, so that, yeah, I'm very welcoming to doing straight. The last couple people that have messaged me has been direct text message. I know a lot of people are very traditional. We're getting filled forms online, but I'm very traditional with shoot me a call, shoot me a text. And then my personal TikTok or any website that you find of mine, you'll always find the link to my direct site to see everything that I have on there.
So, for anybody listening in and he needs some help on purchasing a vehicle, make sure you reach out and he will help facilitate a deal. So,
Mhm.
you talked about how you were on in the industry, kind of on the sales side of it, at the desk, things like that. What is one thing about the industry that you wish you could change and why?
Honestly, I think all it really would be is the process in itself. And I think that's pretty general to what a lot of people believe. I am not one to sit here and demonize every dealership because I personally have worked under great management for great companies. And I know having personal experience buying a car and having it be difficult, it almost gave me a self reflection as to what not to do with my own personal buyers at the time. And, over the time that I've been doing this, it's been a little bit over a year now that I've been a buyer's agent. And I've worked with about 90% of dealerships who are very, very easy to work with, who have no problem working with me. But then there's that 10% who still try to make a very difficult process. Um, I know traditionally a lot of the buyer advocates who are out there do everything very remote, but I'm trying to build I consider more of a concierge service specifically here in my state. So I'm actually bringing cars to customers, going with them to the dealership, right? I'm sitting with them through finance. And I had an experience very recently where I got to help a really close friend of mine. And, I understand that salespeople are trained to close the deal, right? But as we're working through this deal, he's telling me things like you can't put our dealership discount with special financing. And I'm like, well, that's not how that works. And after fighting for about 5 minutes, I'm like, listen, can I just talk to your manager? Right? Like, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is how I'm licensed and what I'm here to actually do. And so the manager comes out and he simply goes, okay, you're right, but we got to make money somewhere. And I go, I understand that. As long as we're able to make something make sense where it makes sense to the buyer, right? Like, it doesn't have to be special financing, but let's make everything pretty straightforward. I'm here to build a relationship with you so that I'm able to bring you more business. And I know that you're trustworthy to not only make that process simple, but not waste anybody's time, right? Like, I don't want to waste my time, the buyer's time, or the dealership's time. And unfortunately, throughout that experience, once I thought we were really getting to the final point of this, I actually ended up having to get my buyer to stop right on the buyer's order before signing because I caught something where they were trying to hide a rebate as part of the deal, right? Like, it wasn't disclosed. They made it seem like they were giving him a specific type of pricing only to find out that they were doing it a different way. Um, I caught it. I talked to the manager again. We made that fix, and I don't think they were too happy with me. But it was just like if you would have communicated to me that this is exactly what we were doing, it wouldn't come off as sketchy. And so to me,
Right.
things to change within the industry is just that, direct conversation of, hey, here's the goal, and how do we get there? Right? Traditionally, from what I've seen in some of the buyer advocates that are out there, they like to almost approach dealerships as the customer, right? They call and go, hey, I'm the buyer. I know I already want this car. Here's what I'm looking for. And I've spoken to a few who feel like they don't hear back from a lot of dealerships. I feel like as a buyer's agent, my job is to figure out what the customer is trying to make sense of, and I'll have that conversation and go, hey, that's not realistic, or hey, yes, this will happen. Once we find the deal that makes sense for them, I'm calling one dealership. I'm going to call one dealership and go, hey, I have a buyer. You have the car. Here's our offer. If you can make this make sense, buyer will be there today, tomorrow, the next day. And I have found so much more success being that direct and forward. And it's interesting to hear that some of these guys are taking upwards of a week to find people car where I'm my average turnaround is 24 to 48 hours.
That's
So
strong.
just
That's
yeah,
strong.
so just creating that true relationship where it's almost a win-win-win, I think is the best way to go. But from the dealership side, just being more clear about, what we're trying to accomplish and making that process a little bit more simple all around.
So that kind of leads me into my next question is what misconception about buyers agents, auto advocates, auto brokers that you can clear up? Because obviously we do a lot of these lives together where it's kind of still that mixed emotion between
Mhm.
dealership employees and the auto advocates and the auto brokers that are coming in too and having this communication because we're trying to bridge that gap, right? What is one misconception that you can clear up?
I don't know that I have a clear answer for that. I think there's people that don't fully understand the process or the goal. Um, I don't know that there's many misconceptions, and this might just come from the fact that where I'm from specifically, I mean, my backyard alone, within a 5 mile radius, I have three brokerages. So you know, that many people that I go, you know, as I started to grow this business, I go to networking events, and there's so many people that already understand why brokers are around, right? They understand the concept of um, having somebody else deal with that work for you, right? I think actually now, I guess now that we're talking through it, I think the misconception is that we're out here to lowball every dealership. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've heard, because here in Colorado, you know, there's a chain of dealerships that will actually not work with brokers because they're so pushy towards the dealership, right? Instead of being a dealership pushy towards the buyers, you got brokers that are being so pushy towards the dealerships and asking for the worst possible deals. And they will, like, I've within the last 2 weeks, I've had two dealerships go, we don't work with brokers. And I go, well, guess what? I'm not a broker. I'm a buyer's agent. I'm just here facilitating this process. They're going to come and buy from you. And they're like, oh, perfect. Right. And so I've managed to get that relationship open with those dealerships that a broker can't because they're so aggressive. Now, I think that misconception goes back to the guys that do call five, six dealerships to try to get numbers, right? Like to an extent, you've got to be respectful of their time, because not every dealership is a bad guy. Not every salesperson is out there to get you. I've worked with some great people in and out of state that have done wonderful with communication, been super clear with the numbers, super direct, and never play the game. So I think it really, for me, it is a convenience space for the people that I'm helping, and I think it would be in the benefit of a dealership to use us as an extra source of leads and clientele that, you know, you're really not paying for.
The last question I have for you before I turn it over to Danny. Where do you see your company growing in the next 3 years?
So within the last 3 year or the next 3 years, I would like to grow a lot within my state. I would like to personally have myself and somebody else working with me, to really push that concierge style in the state, and then within the year spread that to a couple other states. Because as much as I enjoy the remote side of doing the negotiations, I do want to give that concierge style approach of, hey, let me bring the car to you so that, you know, if you haven't test driven the car, let's not wait until, you know, you're buying the car in case you don't like it. Let me bring it to you, right? Let me bring the paperwork to your home. Let me not have you step into a dealership. And I think that'll bridge a slight gap between the brokers here and then like myself as a buyer's agent. So being able to bring that kind of advocacy and service to multitude of states with actual storefronts, I think would be a big goal of mine.
That's amazing. I'm very glad and appreciated that you came up here to do this podcast with us. That is all the questions I have for you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Danny and let him ask you his questions that he has. And then I will have one final question at the end for you. But
Okay,
this is where I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Danny.
Thank you
perfect.
so much, Taylor. I appreciate you. So, Mr. Jose, my first question is why TikTok? Why, out of all the platforms, why are you using TikTok?
So it's funny that you say that, and I think TikTok has been the most difficult platform for me to get into. I actually didn't even have TikTok for the longest time. I think I downloaded it like in 2024, because for the longest time I feel like everybody saw TikTok as like a dancing app, right? It was used for a younger crowd who just wanted to do like dance videos and things of that sort. And as I started to get more into it and started to come across the live part of it, you really start to realize what a powerful tool TikTok is. My biggest following and my biggest professional following is in Facebook, right? So Facebook is where I post more personal and professional side. Then TikTok is almost more a platform of commercial e type of um, what would you call it? Like videos, I guess, right? So everything on there's a little bit more edited, it's a little bit more planned, scripted, and when you get a TikTok, it's raw, right? Like people want to see raw, and I do believe it's why things like live are really popular, right? Because they're seeing you in real time. It's raw, it's who you are. Like you cannot hide between behind editing or I mean, I guess you could do filters, right? But you can't really hide when you're doing TikTok. And for me, it was, I mean, when I tell you that it took me months to even get comfortable with talking to the camera, and finally deciding to do TikTok live was a big step for me, because it was an unknown world to me, and that awkwardness of having to sit in front of the camera speaking to almost nothing was a big challenge for me. But I do believe it's a very strong tool for any sort of business or anybody that's looking to grow.
So let me ask you this, because I downloaded TikTok probably like 5 years ago. I just started getting more and more into it just recently, probably like I'd say like March. And how I met you was we have a special bond, right? So like,
Right.
um, I honestly I don't even know how I even met you. I know you crossed on my For You page, or I think someone showed me shared a live and said, check this guy out, and then I'm like, boom,
Hmm.
we had a connection, right?
Yeah.
How Since you've started TikTok, how many connections have you made?
Dude, it's insane how quickly after I met you specifically, dude, I can't tell you. It was like we set off an ember and then the forest caught on fire. It was insane. I've been doing networking events in person for I don't know, the better of 8 months. And I've come across and met really great people, but nobody that I felt was truly a pillar of support. It almost felt like they were always trying to pull you in as a client or sell you on the idea of joining some sort of business group or anything. And when I met you and started to get more into this group, meeting yourself, meeting Taylor, and all the people in TikTok who do all these lives, I mean, it's a different level of networking, and you guys have really become a pillar of support for me, especially when I'm looking to get things done. I mean, it was amazing to be able to hop on that message chain that we have together and go, hey, I need help with this car, and seeing how quick everybody was to help. Like, you guys are amazing, and I've almost transitioned my networking to more of an online platform than in person. Like August, I spent so much more time doing lives, and between you joining mine, me joining you, and hopping in into anybody else's live, I've dedicated so much more time to doing that than spending an hour or two at a networking event in person.
And the nice thing about it too is like, like Seth and like Chase and all them, right? Those are all other advocates as well, and they like to help other people out. There was a
Hmm.
time where Chasen came in and he explained everything about leasing, right? And he
Yep.
didn't care if you were a salesman or another advocate, whatever. It's helping other people, right? That's the main thing in this business, is helping other people so other people can grow. It's not like, oh, I don't want to teach him how to do this because then he's going to put me out of business. People don't think,
Hmm.
and just to I forgot what Chasen said, that they 2 point something million cars are sold in the United States a year. So
Yeah.
there's definitely cars being sold, and everybody can take a piece of the pie. You know what I'm saying? So that's the nice thing about it. And then, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed meeting you, and especially you. We're growing together, right? Like you said, you're joining my life, I join yours, we join Taylor's. We're all here to support each other, right? And sometimes,
Right.
like, hey, I don't get this, and it's a nice thing about, hey, I can reach out to Taylor, or I can reach out to Jose. He'll probably know the answer.
Hmm.
That's the nice thing about it. And obviously, we all have our cell phone numbers, and if we don't, it's easy to get it within like a minute. You know what I'm saying? To get some
Yeah.
number. But my next question would be, if you saw yourself as a little kid, what would you tell your little boy?
Really good question. I've actually thought about that recently, because I had somebody ask me recently why why part of the reason why I decided to do what I do. And ever since I can think back, when people would ask me what I wanted to do, my response was always, I want to have something of my own. I was never a big fan of the school system, or like I went to school and the whole thing, but I never pursued school in a traditional way. I enjoyed learning, but not to that way. And so being able to see myself following through with, something that I actually enjoy and growing out of it, the thing that I would tell the younger me or a kid, my kid, is to pursue whatever you want to pursue. I think we get caught up in, telling younger people or parents telling kids to go to school and get a degree and do all this thing. But in reality, there are so many paths to success. And the only one that's going to make sense for you is the one that you love. Um, I've been very fortunate in the industry. Like, I love the industry. the 10 years that I've spent going through, sales, finance, management, like I've loved every single part of it. I genuinely enjoy the process of the car business in itself. And so being able to grow something myself as an independent agent here in the state is beyond words. I mean, having people trust me to help them or guide them through such a big decision is unreal to me. So that probably be the only thing I could say is follow what you feel is right and what you feel will lead you to success.
One last question. And Crazy Car Sales guy couldn't be here, Mr. Zach. He just bought a house and he's moving in. But I'm
Nice, good
gonna
for him.
question in his behalf.
Okay.
We've been asking you questions. What questions do you have for me or Taylor, if any?
Ooh. That's a good question. I guess my question for you guys would be, what is your guys' goals within the auto industry, if whether they be short term or long term, and what are your guys' personal views in the advocate world, right? Because they are definitely starting to pop up everywhere. How do you guys see that potentially changing the actual industry?
For me, I called you today because I'm working with one right now. For me, I don't mind advocates, and the reason why is because you guys are already doing all the work, pretty much, right? You guys are getting trade information, you guys are getting the customer's information sometimes, and then you just shoot it over to us, and it's like easy as 1, 2, 3, right? We can agree on the numbers, we get it done. And in my line of work as in sales, right? If I get an extra 2, 3 car deals a month because of an advocate, and I don't have to do that much work talking to the customer, I'm all easy. You know what I'm saying? I'd enjoy that. And here's the thing too, is like I had this advocate call me today and talking like they were the customer, and I called him back and I said, hey, like, are we gonna do a deal or not? And then she's like, well, I'm actually an advocate. I'm like, okay, if you could have said that from the beginning. I mean, I'm not gonna treat you differently, but I'd understand that you're still communicating with the customer. It's gonna take longer than 20, 30 minutes, like you said, you gotta call me back on, and I'm not
Right.
working there. That's the one thing that I would say, hey, be honest with the dealership, be honest like you are, right? Say, hey, I'm an advocate, blah blah. It makes it easier for the salesperson to be like, okay, they're talking to the customer, they'll get back to me eventually, right? But yeah, I mean, I see them pop up all the time, and like Jason, I like you, I like Seth. I mean, the car mom. I mean, there's so many advocates out there, right? And the nice thing about it is I get along with every single one of them. I love every single one of them. But yeah, that's my take on that. And what was your second question?
Where do you see yourself, either short term or long term, within the industry?
So I've always wanted to become in management, as more
Okay.
to see going behind the scenes as what they do and stuff like that. I don't I don't want that headache, to be honest with you. I don't want to be the babysitter to the salesman, stuff like that. I just want
Yeah.
to myself help customers. And now that I've been posting on Facebook more and stuff like that, I've been seeing repeat customers and referrals come from Facebook itself. So now I know
Nice.
that customers are trusting me. They bring their kids down, they bring their parents down. They're starting to bring people to me, and that's what I like to see. Is it makes me happy when I'm like, oh, this guy referred me to you because you treated him so well. I don't see myself leaving the industry. I just see myself growing in the industry as a salesperson.
Okay. Nice.
Ms. Taylor?
Two solid, great questions and loaded questions at the same exact time. The first point I'd like to address is your question about working with auto advocates. I think the industry has painted it as a bad thing that auto advocates exist, and I disagree with that. Dealerships have built that reputation that they're the big scary bad guys by the way they have treated consumers, the process that they go along with it. And that is the reason why we had buyer advocates, auto advocates, brokers, and everybody start emerging a lot more now, because we have created the distrust between the dealership and the consumer. Millions and millions and millions of cars are sold every single year in the industry.
Hmm.
Everybody needs to work together, right? My vision is that we're going to end up merging auto advocates, buyers agents, brokers, negotiators, and end up creating a plan where we merge it all together and we can work in uniform unison. And let's be
Okay.
honest here, using an auto advocate, it's a lot more simpler process than going into the dealership and do it. All the hard work
Hmm.
is being done and it's super simple. They go to the dealership, they maybe test drive the car, but most likely they're just signing it or even doing it all online and the car gets shipped. Super simple process. And that's what
Yeah.
consumers want. They want the ease of the transaction. Second part of your question, when it comes down to goals, short term or long term, I'm kind of in that right now, figuring out what I want to do next. I've been in the industry for 5 years and I've done a little bit of everything. I've done leadership management coaching, I've been sales, BDC, internet sales. My goal is I want to help coach and develop people that work within the industry to be better for themselves, to better their careers. So
Right.
that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Um, so yeah, that's my goal. So I'm going to be working on that and launching that here very soon. So
Nice. That's exciting. That's real exciting.
so yeah.
Very nice.
Anything else, Jose? Is that all you got?
You, you know, I'm curious because you guys ask what I would change within the dealership side of the industry. Is there anything that you guys would want to see changed from the advocate side of the industry?
That's a loaded question as well, and here's why. Because a lot of you guys that are the auto advocates, the brokers, have started coming into the lives with us, right? And we've talked and we've
Hmm.
built these relationships and we all work together. As you mentioned, if you need help, you can text in our group chat, hey, I have a client looking for XYZ. And somebody's going to know somebody that can get you in contact with somebody that knows somebody, right? And so I think for me, for the advocates and the brokers that aren't a part of the community that we've built, need to become part of that community, right? Because it's not an us versus you, it's we're all
Hmm.
working together at the end of the day for the same goal. How are we going to help the consumer get into the vehicle they want, and how can we find it? And who's going to help us
Right.
find it?
Right.
And we don't ask each other, hey, Jose, I helped you find this car that you needed. Where's my piece of the pie? It's, hey, no, don't worry about it. If you need anything else, let me know. I'm sure we'll know
Hmm.
somebody. And we're building that relationship where we're all working together, even if it's not you having a client for us to sell a car to. And at the end of the day, I'm sure if one of us needed like a dealer trade of some kind, you would know some dealership that we could get a hold of to help with the dealer trade. So I think we're working together. I just think we need to broaden how many or reach out to more of the auto advocates, the auto brokers, the buyer's agents to start being a part of the community and realizing
Hmm.
it's not an us versus you. It's a we thing and we all help each other out.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like what Taylor said, I agree 100% everything that she said. I mean, that's the thing is like we're not against you or you're against us. We're all working together, right? It's kind of like firefighters and police officers, right? Or the EMTs are all working together, right? Even though they're different, and sometimes you hear on TV and blah blah blah, right? But there's some that are close. Like my community is close with the cops, close with firefighters. They all get together, have like all kinds of stuff, right? And that's what we need to do is come together, work together, and love each other. Most important thing. Because at the end of the
Yep.
day, I might need something from Jose. Jose might need something from me. Vice versa. We would just never know, right? But that's why we gotta first be kind, be humble, and love each other. And the world will be a better place.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like it.
One final question for you, Jose, and you can
Okay.
answer it one way or another, or you can do both, however you want to do it. But if
Okay.
you had the attention of everybody in the automotive industry or the attention of consumers for 60 seconds, what would you want to say?
Had the entire side of consumers, I would tell them to simply prepare themselves a little bit better. Working in the industry from the dealership side, as long as I did, we were always told that our customers were always going to be more educated on what they were looking to buy than we would be, because they spend so much more time researching that car. And while they research the car that they want, I don't know that many actually sit down to research the math and the cost of ownership and everything that comes along with that specific car. So for consumers, it'd be simply, sit down and really create a plan, because next to buying a home, it's your second biggest financial purchase. And for many, it's your first, right? It really shows responsibility financially, and to being able to take on that responsibility, you got to have a plan for that. Um, Following on that same thing, for the dealership side, I think I can personally say this honestly, is at some point I got caught up in that mentality of how am I going to sell another car today? And when you lead with that mentality, you get caught up in the wrong things, and you almost try to force a sale, and it's where you lose a sale. When you lead with curiosity as to what's bringing somebody in, and really taking the time to understand why they're looking at that car, and trying to find a solution as opposed to just getting another unit out, I think you'll find yourself making more deals and selling even more cars. It's really fascinating to me how many people still play on the game of, you have to be present for us to negotiate a deal. Because to me, I mean, the way that I was as successful as I feel I was in that industry was being in the internet team and working to 1 to 2 deals online, and then having 3 people show up on a Saturday, and you can pull off a hat trick because you've already done 2 of those deals online. They're coming in to pick up a car, right? It's how you get those units up. If you continue to get stuck in this mentality of, I've got to have you here and I've got to find a way to sell you a car emotionally while you're here, you're not going to maximize your own personal winnings. It's really lead with assistance. And in a way, as weird as it sounds, I was always taught to work my pay plan, right? And a lot of these pay plans are volume based. The only way you're going to hit that volume is if you're selling multiple car days. If you're facilitating that process online, over the phone, and in person, you'll sell 3 to 4 cars in a random Saturday, and you'll hit all the spiffs and you're making all the money. But you really, really gotta take that coaching approach whenever you're working with somebody.
I like
And with
it.
that, everybody, that ends this episode of the Dealership Download. Make sure you go and follow Jose on all the social media platforms. Reach out if you need assistance with purchasing a vehicle. And make sure you tune in for next week's episode.